So I will start with a small introduction just to let you know how a shattered life I started when suddenly one morning I had decided for the first time to leave my home, not for tourism, not for work, and with two kids. That morning I decided for the first time to leave home and visit my friend. She lost her child in an attack that caused the health center where he was volunteering. He was only a child and like he's almost 18 years old and he died. I couldn't stop my tears as I walked through the streets and alleys, seeing those who were sleeping under the bridges. I saw others sleeping among the bushes with no shelter. I even cried more when I saw how my friend, she was very strong mother mourning her only son, saying that she accepted God's will. Like just few minutes after I left, I checked my email on my mobile and I saw a message confirming a booked flight for me and the girls. And I had to go and finalize the booking and leave to the airport in less than 3 hours. I just remember how confused I was. How am I going to tell the girls about it? And is it a reality now that the was escalated? So I got this notification from the US Embassy since my kids are US citizens. I don't know how my children were able to endure such situation. But for me, safety of the kids is a priority. So I decided to go on. In less than 2 hours, I had to tell the kids, we are traveling. Hooray! Yes, yes. It's like we're going on a picnic. I didn't want them to be afraid, but I'm sure that every single feature in my face was saying that I'm so afraid and I'm so confused. But I needed them to pack. I wanted them to. They say, we want our cats. No, we should take our toys, our books. We need to say goodbye to our cousin. No, we can't go without seeing our friends. We need to see our grandma. And this is where I felt, no, I can't. I can't answer all these questions. I'm not in my complete strength to be able to answer them. I took them to my sister's house and left them there. I went back home. I packed. I picked them up, headed to the airport. This was a journey I was undertaking for the first time in my life without planning, no strategy, no vision, no reasonable outcomes. There's no measurable indicators this time. I felt like I was stepping into a black hole. I will enter with faith and one message telling myself all the time, yes, I'm strong. I can do it. I always worked with displaced people, especially women, so I should know what to do. I strengthened myself by remembering that I have the experience, I have the skills that can make me overcome the challenges of displacement. Why I considered myself displaced? Because by definition, if we hear to what the UN define displaced, it's forced or obliged to be moved and compelled to flee or to leave the home or place of residence. It's a particular result of an armed conflict, a situation of violence that's violated human rights or natural or human-made disasters. According to the UN definition, I am officially a displaced woman. I am a single mom with 10-year-old twin girls, and we are displaced. The emotional toll to cope with this trauma and loss is my second slide. And in this part, I will talk more about how the grief and loss, because I explored these emotions that I was seeing in the eyes of women that I've met after they were displaced in different countries, in Sudan, in Iraq, in Yemen, in Sri Lanka, in Afghanistan, in Syria. Like I've seen them, but this is the first time I was able to do the interpretation. So displacement wasn't a single event. It was a recurring nightmare. Eventually, in less than 60 days of the first period of my displacement, I can only have one image of the scattered luggage on a floor where I was in a room I'm familiar with, not familiar with, and I went to a friend's home in Istanbul, then rented on an island house, and then I had to take a flight to Gaziantep to see a friend, and then I went to a hotel back to Istanbul, and finally I was in a home. Then I had to go to Ankara again to the embassy's meeting, and like every single time, just imagining myself how this displacement, like like I have to pack and unpack and put my bags on the floor and trying to manage everything. And you know what, the good part of it, like it was the very first time, and within 24 hours I tried different kind of transportation. I was on an airplane, then on a car, then on a boat. Once we were on a boat, then a bus, then a metro, juggling all these luggage and the constant anxiety of protecting my young daughters. Like I wasn't able to sleep. I have to follow up what's happening in Lebanon, what's happening to my family. The accommodation wasn't comfortable. There's constant pressure, critical decisions I have to take. Where to go, how to survive, what should I do? My professional identity as a journalist or even a strategist, in those moments, they were just vanished. I was reduced to a vulnerable parent, overwhelmed by fear and uncertainty. Tears flowed easier than the solutions, where I was like, they used to tell me, oh, here's the hen that lays golden eggs. She keeps giving us solution for everything. Now I'm not that hen laying golden eggs anymore. The girls' education, their health, uh, this was mirroring millions of displaced women and girls worldwide. Like, really, if you go to statistics, you will note that more than 48% of the displaced persons were women and girls. And if you go more into numbers, you will find in at least like 80 countries, we have 33 million under 25 years old. Just it comes to my mind when we talk about the displacement and the health issue. I remember one night when my both girls had fever. I was in that hotel room, panicked. I couldn't access like familiar remedies because you're not home. The language, as usual, is a barrier. You have to go to the pharmacy, use your mobile. Google Translate now is became my best companion in this travel. Okay, I have to explain, and then I have to call a very dear friend with us today. Okay, can you explain to her? And then we do this translation until I was able to get her the remedy. And then I can't feed her anything. No more restaurants, no more delivery. I use the kettle to boil pasta to feed her pasta. I used the kettle to boil vegetables because she can't eat something other than boiled vegetables. And I was like just imagining, like I have the luxury to be in a hotel. I have access to stuff. And finally, in certain situation, you will become like any person that has no clue what to do and can't find a solution. This experience brought to me another reality about vulnerable women and girls that has a high risk of abuse, like 37% experiencing like different kind of sexual harassment. And I recalled this once I was leaving the hotel room and telling the girls, don't open the door. we have a secret code. I'll give you the secret code. If I knocked on the door and I gave you the secret code, this is only where you can open the door. They have a door that they can close and lock. But what about those displaced women that are scattered in the tents and camps and places that are not really safe for them? Providing for my children became like a constant struggle. And another challenge I wanted to make sure and secure for my girls is their education. We don't know how much we are going to stay away from home, but I should navigate school registration, ensure their access to online classes, and help them catch up on missed lessons due to internet problems and challenges. Now, witnessing also their emotional breakdowns. Like, do you imagine when they are just in the middle of an online class and their tears are flowing as they are mourning the loss of their school? They want their friends. Why did you bring us here? We don't want to stay here. Take me home. I want my pets. I want. This was really more overwhelming than anything possibly can happen to me. How can I possibly support their mental health right now when I am barely holding onto my own? Like, I needed some psychological support, but I couldn't. So to go to the part where we have to be a little bit positive to build resilience. We have to find strength in the community. This is my second slide for now. So I will be talking about the power of solidarity and finding a purpose. And maybe these are the two main keywords that made me discover how we can build resilience with displaced women, starting with what I was able to overcome through these two magic words. So the power of solidarity, like, we were recounting the support received from other displaced women and the importance of community in times of crisis. So I turned to the network of women that I had built during my professional career. I was a monitor and evaluator for projects that aimed to assist displaced women since the past 9 years. Like, I went to different countries to do this job. I had gathered like numerous impact stories of resilience and peace building efforts. I looked into my contact and called everyone I know. Like, I was describing my situation, and then I was gaining those positive vibes that enforced my resilience over and over again. I was fortunate to have the unwavering support of a very dear friend, and allow me to say her name, Meltem. Meltem Turkoz, my great support, who generously shared even her contacts with me. Remarkable woman, like a Syrian refugee living in Turkey, an Iraqi woman living in Turkey, another American citizen living in Turkey. Like, she was trying to provide me with those invaluable connections that led me to build a new community that I feel till this moment I belong to. All were asking me what next. I didn't know the answer, but I continued creating this new community for me and for my kids. Like, we joined the community of Moda Church, we joined the community of International Women in Istanbul. We joined even families that are so close to my friend and to other Syrian refugees who used to live in, and they are still living in Turkey. I hope to find the solace and build new connections with other women and children. That's why I was like trying to be merged in every place there was a chance to create this community. By delving into the life stories of many inspiring women, learning from the challenges they faced and were able to overcome, I sought to rediscover the elements essential for my own resilience and the well-being of my children. I yearned to create a new purpose. This is where the new purpose has to start. So the recent Israeli attacks in Lebanon have resulted in the displacement of significant number of women and children. And it was like almost estimated more than 1 million. And they were located in schools, they were located in centers, in different education centers and venues, and they had nothing. And while I was like here in like staying in Turkey and looking at those numbers, uh, and all this increased vulnerability taking place day after day, I started doing my connections with the Ministry of Social Affairs, with some people working in the municipalities, trying to understand the needs. I created the purpose of helping the displaced women in Lebanon. Learning from my own experience as a privileged displaced woman in another country, I have safer condition. This led me to prioritize contacting some of our strategical partners. They were in Europe. I sought funding. I wrote a proposal. I created my team in Lebanon. I decided that we have to work more to advocate for peace and justice. But first, we should focus on providing psychosocial support for both women and children. And this is where we started our advocacy in action and supporting women and children in need. And I will be talking about two things as well in this new slide, which is empowering women and raising awareness. When I'm talking about supporting women and children who have been displaced by this conflict, my focus was on providing them the essential resources. They need to be empowered, and that we have to work to advocate for their rights, and at least start with this. And engaging youth, particularly those who were themselves displaced, was a key objective in this project. I aim to empower them to contribute in enhancing the mental health and resilience of displaced families. So we were driven by this purpose after successfully securing a very small grant. And I will tell you what's the grant. It was less than 5,000 US dollars. But what we did was targeting at least 1,000 women and more than 2,000 children in less than 2 months, providing them with psychosocial sessions was giving me the power to continue the everyday routine, staying with the children online, cooking, and then helping them in their homework, and then cooking and then following up with the team on what they did, what they didn't do, how they are outreaching the youth, how they are able to achieve the objective of the project. And later on, we should follow these indicators. We need to collect these stories. We have to make sure that their basic needs are met. How can we know that our services are really giving the results they need? Do this, do that. So I became like so much busy that when I used not to be able to sleep because of the confusion I felt, now I'm not able to sleep because I barely have time to finish everything I need to do. But when I was talking about the objective of engaging youth, I wanted another objective to be achieved as well, which is enhancing the mental health and the resilience of those families located in at least 15 different schools in a very big area. And every time I was reading the results of the sessions, I was so much like satisfied. Yes, finally, I'm doing something. We're raising awareness. We're creating something out of nothing. For raising awareness, yes, we are sharing their stories. So this is what should I do? I should be sharing my story. I should be sharing the women's story about their resilience, about the impact of this war on the civilians. How is the human cost of conflict and the urgent need for peace has to be part of my mission. And when I was doing this, like, okay, Suraya was a Syrian refugee, and of course, I'm giving you fake names. but these are real stories. Like Suraya is a Syrian refugee, and she fled out of her country like when she was 16. She had a dream to become a journalist. She wasn't able to enroll in school. And guess what? She had to go and work. She was less than 18, so she is not allowed to work. But this is the first need of a displaced woman. She wants to work. She wants to be productive. She wants to be able to to have the money that can cover all her expenses. Moreover, and because she's in that situation, Suraya was facing a different kind of sexual abuse and sexual harassment from her boss. And she had to choose either to leave work, and maybe it will be very hard to find another work, or to accept this abuse that her employer or her boss is doing against her. But finally, Suraya took the decision, and this was when empowering women, raising awareness stepped in. This woman was able to receive vocational training. She was able to stand for her rights, and she was able to provide training sessions for other women to make them able to keep their dignity through work and through awareness. Manal is a Yemeni refugee that I also worked with her, and she received a full scholarship to the university in one of the countries. And guess what? When they knew that she is not a resident, or they knew she's a refugee, all kind of discrimination were against her. They were rejecting her. She felt the social isolation. And this is what I remember, that when I felt this social isolation, I only needed people to communicate with and share. So really, this is even more worse than the war itself, when you start feeling that you are rejected just because you are different. And another message of what kind of policies we really need whenever we want to deal with the displaced issue. I will share few more lines with you. Like, I will stop after 4 minutes, just to keep our time as it was planned. So another woman that I worked with as well was Farida from Iraq. And you know what's really challenging about her story? That she was forced to get married to someone from ISIS. And she faced all kind of violence from her family to force her to get married. And after she got married and her husband died, leaving her with the 3 kids, her parents felt ashamed of her husband, and they disowned her. They didn't accept to have her back. Where did she end? She ended in a camp, isolated away from Mosul, where all those family members from ISIS people were led there. Her son wanted to revenge for his father. They were living in a place that is totally a disaster for a living for even animals. But finally, when she was able to be supported through solidarity and through empowering and through raising awareness, she was able to be part of this women initiative. She received more education and for her kids, and employment opportunity for her. And this is where she told us in one of the meetings that her son is aiming to join military to defend his country. This is how resilience should be. This is how empowering women should be. We shouldn't simply look at these people as if they are not human beings and with no feelings. Finally, I would like to go to the next slide, please. We have to talk about the importance of women's leadership. Are women parts are women peace builders? Like, do they have a role in peace building? Do they have a role in conflict resolution? Women really have the insights and perspective of that. And this reminds me of a woman that lost 2 of her kids because she was able to make an impact on other mothers when she pushed them to make their sons leave any extremist group and to leave any arms in their hands and to go back to education. Those people, when she was a big threat for them, because she's a peace builder, this woman faced the death of two of her kids. So, how can we break the cycle of violence? It's not only with empowering women and girls to become agents of change, they have to be part of decision making, yes, but creating national strategies and preventing policies and laws that encourage war is definitely a priority. May I go to the next slide, please? So we want to build more peaceful world. We need to advocate for a world free from war. Every woman and girls can live in safety and dignity. And empowering young women needs to be inspired. And by sharing these stories and making their voices heard, I think we can get more into equitable and peaceful world. So my call to action today by the end of this presentation is solidarity and collective action. So the global solidarity and collective action historically was able to achieve a lot of changes in the life of people, in the life of women, and in the life of building peace in a lot of countries. So together we can make policymakers hear women voices more. Thank you, and I'm ready for any questions. Is someone talking because I can't hear you?
Sorry. Yes, that was great. Thank you, Randa. Quite a story. I'm going to open it up for questions. Either raise your hand or you're a small enough group, you can just speak up, unmute yourself, unlike what I did. And so, questions. Well, I'll ask a practical one.
Yeah.
Sort of a practical guy. How do you, as obviously you have a wealth of detail about these stories. How do you sort of store them? Do you take notes? Do you record? From a researcher point of view and a journalist, how do you gather your information so you can go back and weave it together into such a narrative like you just told? What's your method?
Yeah, I actually I use two different methods. Like the first where I take a lot of notes, and sometimes when I want to go back to present something like this presentation, I simply call those people again. So three women of those that I shared the story with you today. Like I was telling her, so how are you? She was checking on me. Yes, I'm back to the country. So do you remember when you told me back then that this happened with you? She said, yes, you remember I did this, I did that. And then I'm trying to live her feelings by listening her voice again. And this gives me more connection to what really was happening with me, connecting it with what happened with her and bringing it now on paper and bringing it in this speech. But of course, as an evaluator or writing in the impact stories during my work with all of these organizations, I do write like the technical simple story, not for a storytelling. It's for showing the success of how someone was able to do this massive change in her life and what was the real reason behind changing those things in her life.
I hope our qualitative graduate students here are paying attention. It seems like a very good technique. Other questions?
I have one. Rhonda, thank you so much, and it's so great to see you. The last time Rhonda and I chatted, she was in the middle of a real crisis situation, so it's really nice to hear, kind of the other side of it. So, my question is a piece of the story that you didn't talk so much about, but I'm so curious about is you're unusual for a displaced person, at least amongst the ones I know, in that you were able to return home pretty quickly, but the situation still is precarious at home. And I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about what it's like, what it was like for you to return, and then also what it's like to live and be doing the work that you're doing for other people, but knowing that your situation isn't necessarily very stable either.
Yeah, but you know, this is like I will answer to the second part before I go back to the first part. Eventually, like hearing the stories of displaced women and following up the reports of the project that I was working on or leading with my team while they were in Lebanon, this was something that is giving me a new like vision of how you really compare. Most of the people, they go into depression because of situation they are facing, and just by knowing that other people are facing more dramatic situation and more hardship different than what you are just claiming as a hard thing, it gives you more power. Like, oh, I shouldn't talk about my displacement, like other people are really facing a lot of challenges and they really need more support than I need the support. So this part really gave me even more powerful component where it really pushed me forward to limit this time of staying for long and coming back home. So coming back home, it was like related if there's safety or no safety. So with the ceasefire that took place exactly after 3 months, or even a little bit less, it was like an indicator, and add to it a little bit of your analysis as in political science. What's going on? The new administration in the States, what's happening in the government of the Israeli? Are they going to escalate what's taking on in Lebanon, or now we are going now to a different level? Like I was trying to use my analytical thinking again, and I'm a strategist student. I took my master's in strategical studies with the Lebanese army. So I was like bringing out all what I have learned and part of my experience of understanding that is it now a new phase for Lebanon after the ceasefire and I can take my kids back home or not. So the decision wasn't easy because I had other challenges that I'm facing as a woman and as a single mom, having a lot of discriminatory laws in Lebanon that makes me face it on a different phase without talking or considering the crisis and the war. Therefore, the priority is to come back to Lebanon is related to education, because we received an email from the school saying after Christmas vacation there's no online courses will be provided for the learners. So my priority is to go back, and such a decision from the school has to be really taken into consideration, whatever taking for security and safety for the kids in Lebanon. So this was the first one. But I had a very big issue with the passports of the girls, because my girls are American citizens and because their passports became less than 6 months. I had to go to Ankara and come back and take an appointment and wait for the passports, booking the trip before I have to pay another 500 US dollars for reissuing the tickets, and making everything last minute is by itself overwhelming. But yes, we did it. And just you need to see the faces of the girls when they knew that they are going back home and holding their passports after we received them from the post office was something that, okay, I made something good. Finally, they are happy that I'm their mother, and I took this decision into account for them.
Other questions?
I have one.
Please.
Rhonda, it's it was really I'm so glad that I met Rhonda and we came into each other's lives and became great friends, and also with the girls. Um, but I remember I wanted you to talk a little bit about what it's like to live in Beirut on a daily level in terms of a sense of precarity, or when you were talking on the phone, when you were here, I remember you were talking with your people in your team in Beirut and about having people access the psychosocial support, but then there were also arms on
Yes.
on site. Can you talk a little bit about that and how you negotiated
Yes, unfortunately, this was a really big challenge. And I remember I was like terrified on the team. Like they have to go inside the school and they heard from a person who is in charge or responsible of one of the schools that were used for accommodating the displaced people. And they told them, we are so afraid. There's a lot of arms inside the school. We don't know if this is safe for you to come in and try to do these psychosocial support sessions. And I told them, okay, did you try to collect information from the woman? They said we couldn't. I told them why. They said there was a guy who's standing beside us all the time, looking at the woman and telling her what to say yes and what to say no. And then finally we were not able to talk to them, so we didn't know what are their basic needs and if these women were facing different kind of violence internally inside these schools other than that. Now, the only thing that we were able to do is to put the safety of the team first, and then to report to the officials who were in the ministries that were working with these schools that we need to raise something. How are you taking into consideration if there were arms smuggled into those schools where there are only civilians? And eventually what happened, if you recall in the news, that some people were running away from one house to another and bombing was taking place surprisingly because those people were armed. And taking into consideration that there are some people who are irresponsible of the civilian's life and facing people who are putting civilian lives as a priority, this is where we need to talk about something new of what happened during conflict that's taking life of civilians that have no intention to harm people, but there are smugglers who are pretending to be civilians, but they are hiding among those civilians. Are we taking this into consideration? Do we need just to bomb those people because we were able to see there are arms there without taking into consideration children and women who are in the same place? Big questions that we really need to sit as men and women peace builders to negotiate and ask, what are we going to do in the coming conflict in Lebanon or in different places? This is not something that we have to consider a life of one person is worthless for the sake of winning a war.
Got time for one more question. I have one, but I want to give other people a chance.
Is there anyone here displaced for one? Like I have this question. Like I'm a little bit curious. Do we have anyone among the students who maybe experienced being displaced even for one day, which has never happened, but like it's a feeling.
Not among this group. We do have, and if you had been able to come in person, you would have gotten to meet these 3 students we have who are part of the Welcome Corps, Welcome Corps on campus, and they joined us last August, and so they're starting their 2nd semester. But you know, I can understand. I can't speak for them, but I can understand, particularly the one I've gotten to know the best. And the last time we met over Christmas, he was working on applications for the rest of his family to come. And
Yeah.
now with the halt in refugee resettlement, that must, you know, his face was just lighting up. You know, we were having dinner and he was telling me about his older brother and his mother who had been sick. And he was really hoping that in the next year they would be able to join him. And
Yeah.
I have not spoken to him since, but I'm sure this has to be, you know, a little bit like what you were just describing. And here he's in this world. In some ways, it's probably even more difficult for these guys because they're in a world that's relatively settled and stable. And they're beginning classes, and they must have such fear and concern. So what would you say to these young men?
Whoa. Well, I will really tell him that he can find the resilience in the eyes of other displaced people who were able to overcome. Like we are really we think we are alone in this world. just by small communication we create with other people, we are able to understand how similarities come between us and others, and how we can conclude a lesson learned from what they have experienced. For me, every single time, maybe I sat with Meltem, I sat with the Iraqi lady in Turkey, with the Syrian lady in Turkey, with everyone who I spoke to on the phone, like just a small chat. I always felt that I have something that I won after this small chat. There's something that gave me the power to continue. There's something I learned that can give me a solution for something I'm facing. There's new ideas. Even this kind of small communication that happened with my kids, that give them the feeling that, oh, we are welcome. They use this good way in welcoming us. Even this was a high benefit for a displaced person. So communication is really a key of developing a better way for resilience, and also for developing the new community that you need to be part of. You can't know who are the people you want to stay with for the coming period if you don't even communicate with them at the beginning. And I don't want everyone. I need just the few. Just like these young girls and boys in school or in universities, they look for friends. Friends are not all the school or all the university. They will find those that they click and match with the similarities and things we can share and things we can communicate about. So I think this is one of the best lessons learned I took from this experience. I shouldn't stop talking.
No, this is very good. And actually, we're doing something, and we will send you some information about it. But on February 11th, we're doing a commemoration of the Vietnamese boat people who came to the U.S. in the 1970s. And so they're going to come. I think we have 5 or 6 lined up who are going to come and speak to the students and to other people in the community to try to convey their stories. But I think it'll be especially important for these young guys and other, we do have other refugee students here on campus to hear people, at 50 years later, what is their life like?
Wow.
Um,
Voices should be heard. Voices should be heard. Like I thought, since the moment I spoke to you, James, and we were talking about this session, and I was saying, this is something I should start doing. I should write the stories of displaced women to make them heard. We have to learn from what they were able to accomplish without a certificate of a PhD or a master's.
Right. Yeah.
They give us the learning key findings and the learnings from what they really experienced, and then we should change them into theories. It's not the other way around. Don't always stick yourself into getting a theory and trying to apply it. Sometimes when you apply and you experience, then you can create new theories in the life of building peace and being resilient to any kind of conflict or attack you will be facing in your life.